you're going to be getting good results, and it's going to be instant. You put your ads up and boom, you're going to start getting clicks.
I am here with Paul, who is a seasoned digital marketer. He's also our marketing manager. And Paul knows a lot about everything digital marketing. But today, we're going to be talking about the core pillars of PPC that we see as timeless principles. Because too many people focus on the latest trends, but we've identified some timeless principles in how we work. And we want to go through them. So, hi, Paul. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm fine. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
That's good. So yeah, Paul, I mean, well, we might as well dive right in. Yeah. So where do we always start when it comes to these timeless principles, and what do you want to know?
Okay. Well, as the first of our 12 pillars would be to track everything, since that is the place to start. Why do you think maybe a comprehensive tracking, or why comprehensive tracking beyond just the basic metrics that you would normally do, perhaps, is crucial for a business's success?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I'd be keen to get your insights at the end of this. So the thing is that we see too many times is that why are you spending money on ads if you don't know whether it's working or not? So by having tracking in place, you can identify whether you're driving traffic or leads. Whether you're driving leads or sales. Whereas too many people who think of digital marketing in any context, but especially paid ads, they just think, I need to drive traffic to my website. I just need more eyeballs on it. But we kind of don't care about that as much as making people money. So that's the key thing. If you're not tracking, you don't know what's working. And that's true for PPC, but maybe other areas as well.
I would agree with that. I mean, also to kind of expand on that, maybe just a little bit, would be that people do often have tracking in place, and they're either not tracking the right things, perhaps, or it's not set up right not set up correctly in the first place, so they're not getting the information they maybe need.
Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry.
And we find also what gets measured gets managed, doesn't it?
Very much so, yes, absolutely. And I think that's something that's really important. So if you're not measuring it, then how do you know? And obviously, as it's key to our onboarding process. Fantastic. So budget control would be the next one for me, I think. So perhaps beyond saving money, what benefits would budget control offer to someone who was doing PPC, do we think?
Well, I mean, yeah. So any business that's well run should have a budget. I mean, we set a marketing budget, don't we? So
yes, this
kind of is a two-pronged thing. One is, do you know how much you're willing to spend on PPC? And is that based on an actual tangible business metric, such as, do you know how much money you make out of your selling your product, and therefore how much budget you want to put forward? But when it comes to budget control, you would not believe, Paul, how many times I get on a call with someone we've audited and they say that the people in-house or an agency running their campaigns isn't controlling their budget. And 1 month they might spend $8,000 and then 15 grand. Now, my first reaction is, who's wrong there? Absolutely, it's the person controlling the budget. It's, if you said to someone, this is my budget, they should spend to it and give you warnings either way if you're not hitting it. But also I'm thinking, how can you get 2 or 3 months down the line and then just suddenly notice that you've been overspending by 50%? It's strange. And the way Google Ads set up is it can overspend by 100, I think now nearly 200% on a given day, but you should be able to even it out over a 30-day period. So if you're not controlling your budget, it goes back to tracking everything. You're not measuring what you want to manage in the right way. So having control out of budget is key, because we're all in business here. So you need to control the pennies, don't you?
Absolutely. So just to maybe a little on that. So our clients obviously set budgets so they they transcend just the ad spend, which is good for general business chat. As part of our process, do we then actively help our clients with the budgeting if they need it, perhaps? If they've got questions, or if they're not sure of how much to spend, or how much they maybe even should be budgeting, is that something we can help with?
Yeah. So I think the key is that you should have a set budget each month. Say, this is how much I want to spend. But some clients will say, as long as you're hitting a particular target, you can spend what you want. That tends to be easier said than done often. But we can absolutely forecast based on seasonality, current competition, all that kind of stuff, what budget they maybe want to spend. And we tend to be a bit more conservative than other people, because I guess it leads on to what you're probably going to be talking about later is, if you don't control your budget, the only winner often is Google or Facebook. So having that budget control, setting the budget, and having that dialogue with whoever's running your account, whether it's in-house team or an agency, to say, how much should I be spending in the context of my overall budget? And as a digital marketing manager, I'm just talking about PPC here, but you've got to spread your marketing budget across like other channels as well, haven't you?
Absolutely. I think that's really important, to consider that your budget, quite often for a digital marketing manager, whether they're in-house or not, that budget does have to stretch a long way. And if in some cases it could be a mix of traditional marketing, as well as digital marketing. So yeah, absolutely, budgeting, forecasting, and having a very keen eye on what's going on, especially when you're then having to report to stakeholders. I think it's increasingly important, definitely. Which kind of brings us onto our next point, I suppose, which would be Google and Facebook and others make enough money. So, as a business, you don't want to give them any more than you have to. Which obviously, as us as a business, is one of our key messages that we like to give, because we definitely agree with that. So I just kind of wonder what your thoughts on that. What drives maybe the decisions for people to overspend? I guess maybe it's because people like Google, they're so big that people feel like they have to give them all their money. I don't know.
Well, I hear quite a few business owners refer to it as the Google tax. So, but I think the key thing here is that, say you're happily pootling along, spending 10 grand a month on ads, and then your finance director comes and says, right, we need to increase sales by 30% over the next 3 months. So I'll give you 30% more budget. They think it's this kind of linear thing that you spend more and you get more. But actually, because of the competition within Google Ads, and because of how bidding works and other elements, it's not a case of you spend double and you get double. It costs you exponentially more to get linear gains. And there is a sweet spot. Now, the problem comes when, if we've got, and we warn clients off this, if we've got a client who wants to drastically increase their spend, if we don't do it in the right way, and we have established protocols to do this, Google would just, or Facebook would just hoover that money up. They love it. They'll just take it, because you have to remember, I'm getting in the weeds here a bit, but it's pay per click based on auctions. So if we suddenly start buying more traffic, that increases the demand for the already limited supply of ad inventory, and therefore that pushes prices up itself. You might need to try and leapfrog competitors. So perversely, you can actually spend more and get less traffic because you're paying more for it. And then it feels like the only winner there is Google and Facebook. And we've already seen countless, well documented in front of Congress and things, examples of Google inflating their prices just for shareholder value. Now, look, we make most of our money out of doing Google Ads, but we see our role as protecting our clients from Google and Facebook and making it work for them as efficiently as possible. So just by having those, again, this is why it all ties together to what we've been talking about. By tracking everything, having that budget control and understanding that these big companies make enough money, you can make sure that you're squeezing as much value for your own business out of every marketing pound that you spend.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think turning it on its head and making it work for you as the business is absolutely the best way to do it. Obviously, we all have to advertise, and there is a cost to that. And Google are the biggest, certainly one of the biggest in terms of channels. So you have to pay that money, Google tax. But yeah, being smart about it is definitely, I think, the way forward. So strategy and planning then. So obviously obviously to us, we like to say, fail to plan, plan to fail, which I think is a brilliant way of thinking about it. So, we think that meticulous planning is essential. Certainly with the dynamic nature of online advertising. Perhaps we can maybe expand on that, on what our thoughts are on the strategy and planning and why it's so important.
Well, I think just even having a strategy or plan is what so many people are missing. You don't get in your car to go somewhere unless you know where you're going. How you get there might change based on the traffic or routes closed or roads closed, or if it's anywhere near the M6, it's going to be closed most of the time. But if you know where you're heading to, yeah. And too many people, they see their PPC account as just something they should be doing. So therefore, they put some ads up because everyone does it and you should be doing that. And then when it comes to they're not getting the results they want, they go in and start trying to do the clicking about and, is this right? Is that wrong? And all that kind of stuff. And there's too many people who just don't take that step back and saying, what are the business objectives here? What are we trying to achieve and how are we going to achieve it? Because these tools do work extremely well to get you traffic and sales for your business, but they are also tools. So there's that old saying, if you've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And therefore people think they just need to do everything in Google Ads, but maybe it's a subset. So we always want to take that step back out of the tool, outside of the specialist knowledge of PPC, and say, what are we actually trying to achieve? What's the business objectives? What are your margins on the product that you're selling? And then from there, we can see how to get, to that end destination.
I think that's pretty much spot on. I think that's exactly right. So from my perspective, I think that's totally right. And I think, certainly, we've seen as a business that plenty of people out there don't have those effective strategies, in place. So I think having that planning certainly up front will just make everyone's life easier. Certainly it'll make your life easier if you're a digital marketing manager. If you're the person actually carrying out the work, and certainly when you're then going back to sat around with a board of directors or whatever, if you don't, you haven't had those steps in place, then, you're going to end up looking perhaps a bit of a fool if you can't explain what the plan was in the first place. So I totally agree with that. So conversion rate optimization, something that's very important, but quite often does get neglected. So I guess, what insights perhaps have you gained, do you think, by focusing on, CRO and conversion rate optimization? Certainly sometimes something that's often overlooked in PPC.
Yeah, there's a lot of so conversion rate optimization, to be clear, is saying if you do something in a certain way, how can you optimize it so it gets to the goal, the conversion that you most want? The fascinating thing about conversion rate optimization is that A, so many people neglect it, but B, if you can get more conversions of whatever action you've got, whether it's a demo sign up, a newsletter sign up, an actual purchase, a lead, a call, any action that you want people to take, if you can optimize that so a higher proportion of people take that action when they visit your website, you instantly get better results. Well, not instantly because it's hard, but you instantly get better results because you're still spending the same amount, but a higher proportion of people are taking action on it. So your money is more efficient. That's the key thing I think that people miss. It's about trying to squeeze all the juice out of your budget as possible. And there are so many things we can do for that. So the simple and classic example is, does an orange or a blue button work better on my landing page, right? So are more people likely to click if it's that? But it comes down to what's the copy, split testing ad copy, all these kind of things that can affect what actions people take when the traffic has been paid for and gets them to the site. And that's the key thing. It's this, what we call from click to close. It's doing all those elements, and CRO it's still an important part of that. So while we on this podcast focus on PPC, which a lot of people think is just traffic and sending traffic, it's still important that A, it's the right traffic, but B, when it gets to where it goes, that it does the right thing. I think that's probably something actually, Paul, you've got more experience than me with the web design element and landing pages. Have you got any insights on CRO?
Yeah, so I would, well, first and foremost, I think you're right. A lot of people just think it is literally a case of, oh, we'll send more traffic to a page, traffic, and that is literally just one part of it. Obviously, we need traffic, as any business needs traffic to the website, and arguably, the more traffic you get, the more conversions you'll get, because it's a numbers game. But if you're sending thousands and thousands and thousands of visitors to your website because you've done a great job on your SEO, they all land on a page, and then you've got a massive bounce rate because either the page is laid out wrong, your colors are all wrong, the message is confused, whatever it might be, or even a mixture of those factors. All you've got then is a roadblock, essentially. All this traffic's arrived, they don't know what to do, it's too confusing, they disappear back to the search engine or the website they came from, and they go and look for somebody else. So, making use of the traffic you've already got and making sure that user journey is as good as it can be and as easy as it can be. People are lazy, often when it comes to using the websites and using the internet in general, because we've all got used to that instant gratification. As soon as something looks a bit complicated or they don't know what to do for whatever reason, they're not going to give it, or most of the time, they're not going to give it a chance. They'll just disappear back to their original point and start all over again. So constant UX, whatever you want to call it, conversion rate optimization is definitely important and something that should be considered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important, which kind of nicely segues into the next point, which would be to always be testing. For us as a company, what motivates us to be constantly testing? Why do we think it's important? Even for instance, even if a campaign seems to be really effective, why not just leave it and let it run and do its thing?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier in our conversation about with the word dynamic when it comes to digital marketing, because it is dynamic. It is constantly changing. There is, much as people would like to think that they can do, there is no set and forget. You always have to be both testing what works now. There's new features all the time. There's new techniques, but also testing what works because of the competition and the seasonality. But it is essentially because of, like we talked about, the CRO, etc. It's baked into what we do because that is the value we bring. We're constantly trying to make our clients' accounts more efficient. We're constantly testing new features that Google brings down the line. And because of our suspicions of Google, we test that they actually work in our clients' interest. We're not just using all these new things because they're there. And that's about having structured testing in the right way. So we're testing to improve our clients' results, both actively in their accounts and up front with new features. But also, if you're not testing all the time, then you're not improving. And I personally believe that, a good life is one where you're constantly growing and improving and seeing what works for you. And that's true for digital marketing campaigns. And I think the key thing that people forget, I guess, about testing is, you've got to break a few eggs to make an omelette, so it doesn't always work. We've actually done a whole podcast on testing as well, so I encourage people to check that out. But for us, I think it's just part of being proactive, isn't it?
No, I would agree with that. I think I always find it strange, and I have come across business owners and just people in my arena, digital marketers that will go, oh no, I'm not touching it. It works. It does what we want it to. Leave it alone. And it's a case of, how do you know you couldn't be improving on it? It might be good, but could it be great? Do you know what I mean? And if you're not constantly trying these things, then how the heck do you know? You can't just sit back and go, yeah, I'm not touching it because it's working.
I understand that fear because there is that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the worst thing you can do if you have a small increase in or decrease in your ROAS, that can be a lot of your margin that goes in your business. So that's why you need to have strategy, be measuring everything and focus on the right things so that you actually just test with a subset of your budget. You're not risking the whole account, but you're still making those incremental improvements.
Brilliant. So on the subject of that then, so focusing on the right things, so the 80-20 rule, and being analytical. So obviously, we know that that there are core things, that they are the core things rather, and what can often make a big difference. What are your thoughts on the 80-20 rule?
I think the older I get, the more I see it in play in everything. Ultimately, the 80-20 rule is, or the Pareto or Pareto principle, as people call it, is that you get 80% of the outputs from 20% of the inputs. Obviously, it's not exactly that, but and I have had people say to me, oh, but it's 22% in my business or whatever. But it's the small few things make the biggest impact. And that goes from in all kinds of layers. So, some clients' PPC is 60, 70, 80% of their entire driving of their traffic. Some it's SEO. But then when you drill down into the SEO, like the PPC part of it, it's actually about 80%, 20% of that PPC account, if it's not managed properly, drives 80% of the results. And there's all kinds of strategies of why you still promote stuff. For example, we have a client who has 4.5 million SKUs or 4.5 million products. You're not going to, they still have to, because of the nature of their business, they still have to advertise everything. But it's about how you apportion all your strategy and your budget into those things that have the highest impact. And then, for each of our pillars, that it kind of breaks down. When you're testing, what's those 20% of things that you can test that'll have the biggest impact? There's no point in testing a landing page if your website's just too slow to start with. Maybe fix that first. And just because what you're focusing on now is what you're focusing on now doesn't mean it's what you're focusing on in future. It's always about honing in on where you're going to have the most impact. And that's a core belief that we have here.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to get sidetracked often. So, making sure that you're... Yeah. Well, and, I've done it myself over the years. You go, oh, look, it's fantastic, I'm going to go and do this. When actually, forget that. Or leave it to another, later on when you've got other things that need to be focused on. So yeah, no, I think that's correct. And so things being a marathon, not a sprint. So I guess why would we prioritize long-term success and I guess sustainability over short-term gains in PPC?
Well, I believe the only short-term gain you can have with PPC is driving pointless traffic. So you can easily whack an ad up and target the whole country for like the word "the" or something and just drive all the traffic. But to the point of, and people don't like to hear this, but PPC is a marathon, not a sprint, because the vast majority of spenders on PPC aren't spending that much money. It's pay per click. So you have to spend a certain amount of money to get a certain amount of traffic. So if you've got, let's say you've got a really small account or even a big account with 100 keywords and you're allocating, say, £10 per keyword, it's still, £1,000, smaller than our clients, but still £1,000. How long is it going to take you to get enough clicks on those keywords to get to statistical significance, let alone conversions? And that's why things take time. Now, when you've got larger accounts like our clients, 30, 40, £50,000 a month, then it still takes time to get enough conversions through. And there's so much automation and algorithms and AI and all this fancy stuff in PPC. But for some of the bidding algorithms to work, you have to have had a certain amount of conversions in a 30-day or a 45-day period for it to come out of a learning phase. And I just find that the people who are trying to sprint to results, they just spend their whole lives having peaks and troughs. Whereas if you gather the data in a strategic and timely fashion, you ramp up carefully and slowly, you're going to have a much more sustainable, less volatile account. And then you're going to have better results for the long term. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't like working for the long term.
I think as well, a lot of people, that there is that, I guess it's a misconception that you certainly with pay-per-click, you pay your money, you get your results. So as long as you're giving Google, let's say for sake of argument, tons of cash, you're going to be getting good results and it's going to be instant. You put your ads up and boom, you're going to start getting clicks, making conversions, if you're an e-com business, or getting leads. That definitely isn't always the case. And I think you've always got to be very careful about using vanity terms as well in there. So when you're setting up your ads, as well as it being a marathon and sprint, just making sure that you're targeting the right things. But obviously I'm getting into the weeds now. But yeah, totally. So in terms of then, I get holistic marketing perhaps, and platform expansion. So how does expanding beyond the individual platforms and integrations with broader marketing strategies, how would they enhance PPC effectiveness?
Well, I think we all know that there's never just one touch point anymore, is there? When people are going through what's known as the buyer journey, they're not just clicking on an ad; they're seeing we're reading reviews, they're maybe reading blog posts, they may be watching videos. It is a whole piece when it comes to being seen everywhere. But on the flip side, especially as a small, medium business, when do you expand to more platforms? Well, you're at the risk of spreading yourself too thin. So if your budget is, say, £5,000, you say, I'm going to cut £2,000 on Google Ads, £2,000 on Facebook, £1,000 on LinkedIn. Are you really going to get the best results from all of those? Or are you constantly going to be wondering which one's better? And that's why we kind of like this waterfall. I think it's a waterfall analogy, or it might be a tree, but you want the big thing that works at the top, maybe Google Ads if it's intent based, and then as it further goes down, it trickles down into the other areas. And what I mean by that is often you have to accept that marketing is a multi-channel affair. You need to measure your marketing across multiple channels, but you also need to focus on the right things. So if you've got one channel that's bringing you most of the gains, but that's still got potential or glaring errors, then that maybe is where you should focus first. So all I say on that is, I've probably confused people, but really it's about remembering that marketing is multi-channel, but only expanding to other platforms when it's truly the right time to do so.
And I think as well, it's sometimes, and I think you mentioned this at the start of your response, it's that if you've suddenly got, I don't know, let's say 5 different channels going, and that they're all delivering, you don't necessarily know where the best results are coming from, so the waters get muddied. So by keeping it a little bit more honed and being careful with your expansion, you will have a better idea of exactly what's working, what isn't, and then where you can divert the most attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's see, copywriting. So we all know copywriting is key. Content is king, as the phrase goes. From our perspective, then, why, or from your perspective, why do you think that strong copywriting is considered to be such a critical element? Even since PPC is often seen as being quite a technical endeavor.
Well, until we all got chips in our head, for now, is still ultimately the end user is still humans, and humans are language and story based in how they make decisions. And yes, while we have to tick off certain elements, is the keyword in the right place, is in the headline and all that kind of stuff. It's how do you stand out from your competition and compel people to do business with you? And that comes down to ad copy and split testing the ad copy, see which resonates best, making sure you get your features in the right place, because we're limited on the number of characters. There's a skill to making things succinct and fitting in, and then to the landing pages and what you showcase on there in what order. So copywriting is, I prefer to think of it as communication, and anything in life where you're acting or dealing with people, which is most things and everything in business, you need to be able to communicate clearly in order to get people to do what you want, not in a manipulative way, but to convince them you are the right solution. And just being as clear in your communication via copywriting, because still the internet is mostly text-based. Even if it's a video, someone has to write the script for that. Then that is why it's key to having that compelling narrative.
Yeah, and the only thing I would expand on that is that it goes beyond just PPC. So whether it's whether it's SEO or whatever you're doing, having that message. So, if you're doing SEO, it's the same thing. You want your messaging in the search engine results to stand out. And when I say stand out for the right reasons, to show that why your business, why you should choose your business, choose your product. And that all comes down from, as you said, the storytelling, and being clever with your messaging, and being honest. People don't want to hear a load of, flannel and BS, so
absolutely.
In my opinion, I certainly don't. When I'm looking through things, I want honesty. So, I think that's the key. So obviously we know reporting is super important, and your KPIs, and your key performance indicators. So what do you think makes for an insightful reporting, and with a focus on the right KPIs? Why is that essential for driving success in a PPC campaign?
It always surprises me when I speak to people who don't get reports. I get it when people get reports that are too complicated down to that communication key and they don't read them. But ultimately, a report should be tied back to the strategy. What are you trying to achieve? What are the objectives? What are the KPIs from that? And then the report should succinctly, clearly, and accurately, because the tracking's accurate, give people that information. And then, if necessary, have drill downs in it. Like, what were my 10 bestsellers this week? What's my non-brand versus brand performance? How's my impression share fared over the last, 90 days? Tailored to what you need to do. But it all comes back to tracking accurately, having a strategy, and then on the report, focusing on the right things, the right KPIs. And it's just essentially, it blows my mind that people don't do reports. And it's just so normal to us. It's almost hard for me to speak about. But if you're not, what gets measured gets managed, and reporting is the mechanism to do that. And with digital marketing, you can report on pretty much everything.
Yeah. And there are some people out there though that don't. That don't care. And I've worked with people in the past, and again, I never really got it myself, where you could spend, I don't know, hours creating a beautiful report that had all this great information in, and they wouldn't even open the email. They wouldn't even look at it. And you were like, how do you know it's working? Well, I just do. It's like, well, how?
Yeah.
You've got some crystal ball somewhere.
Going to detail with the report as well.
Yeah. So yeah, totally. I don't get it. And so I guess the last of our 12 pillars would be that to be constantly learning and evolving. So how does a company what's the word foster a culture of continuous learning and adaptation? Certainly, I guess with regards to its PPC approach, I guess, to keep it on topic.
Yeah. Well, I think you need to give your team time to do that, or employ a team that has that culture. So things never stand still with digital marketing. The reason, we like talking about these timeless principles is that they are timeless. They don't change. These things are still going to be true in 10 years as they are now. You still need a strategy, you still need to report, still need to track. But there are nuances that you need to constantly learn and evolve. So I think part of your learning time should be constantly learning those timeless principles, which is what we're aiming to do with this podcast. But generally, our wider podcast is just give the PPC community, whether you're proactively managing or not, or you're employing people to manage PPC, an understanding of what you need to be looking for and how to well run things in a timeless way. But you also need to be constantly learning and evolving, because if you stand still, you're going to miss out on the latest feature, and then suddenly Google or Facebook will switch it off and you won't know how the new feature works. And it's so easy to get information, but it's so overwhelming. So I'd encourage people to go directly to the source, to constantly learn and evolve. So go straight to Google's own product blogs for the Google ads, or Facebook's, and find out about the features. Subscribe to one or two trusted sources like Search Engine Land of news, and of course our own newsletter, podcast, and videos and stuff can give you all the things you need to know without fluff.
Oh, that's that very nice last point. I totally agree with that one as well. Make sure that you subscribe, obviously, to our own news, not because it's our own news, but actually because it contains a real wealth of super information. a lot about PPC, but just digital marketing in general. So I would definitely recommend subscribing to that. And yeah, I think what do they say? The term every day is a school day. I think certainly in just digital marketing on the whole, even if you don't not just talk about PPC, but the whole arena, it's just evolving so quickly. And you know, and if you just not even just taking one component, SEO, PPC, just Google's guidelines on how their algorithms work, and then you've got social media and everything else. It is moving at such a rapid pace, and now AI as well, being thrown into the mix. I think not staying on board with what's going on and keeping up to date. With you say, there's loads of them out there. Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal, looking at the Google's own blogs. There's loads. It's super important, and I would highly recommend everyone to at least spend a little bit of time every week just keeping up to date with what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay, well, that was good. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for your time and taking us through those timeless principles.
No, thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And we'll see you on another podcast soon. Cheers.
Bye.